The Power of Imagination, an interview with work culture warrior Dr. Joanna Massey, and Northwest Breakfast Casserole. Stick around!
Welcome to Business Edge Radio, the show that gives you tips, tricks, tools, and techniques about how to build a more profitable business, while at the same time creating your perfect lifestyle. It's a show about working less and living more. A few golden nuggets, a little bit of wisdom, and over 35 years of business experience to help you keep your edge. Lifestyle entrepreneur, best-selling author, internationally renowned business speaker, and daddy of three, Mitch Graff brings the heat with actionable techniques for building the business and lifestyle of your dreams. Now your host, Mitch Graff.
What is up, Unleashed Tribe? And welcome to another fast-paced edition of Business Edge Radio, the ultimate brainstorming session for your business and your life. I hope the sun is shining wherever you are in this wonderful world, and that you're having a perfect 10-day today so far. I'm your host, Mitch Graff, and on today's show, we discuss the value and the importance that innovation and reinvention play in the foundation of business today. I have a fascinating interview with Dr. Joanna Massey, who discusses why there's such a big shift in workplace culture. And if you stick around until the end, I share with you a recipe for a Northwest Breakfast Casserole. Imagination. It's what makes us different than anything else on this planet. It allows us to envision what kind of house we want to live in, where we want to go on vacation, what we're going to say in the job interview, what we're going to have for dinner tonight, and what kind of business we want to have. It's what gives us the motivation to get up each and every day with excitement for what our life will be like in the future. I can remember when I was about 5 years old, we lived in the middle of nowhere in the Mojave Desert in Southern California. Nothing but sagebrush and creosote bushes and lizards. I had built a pirate ship, complete with galley, the masts, a kitchen, holding tank for my prisoners, and of course a steering wheel. In reality, it was only a few pieces of junk lumber that my dad had given me, and a few toys from my bedroom. But my pirate ship did move because it didn't have any sail material that would allow the wind to take me to uncharted islands. I remember my mom coming out to see how things were coming along. When I told her that I was dry docked and unable to go anywhere, she looked at me with a smile, gently removed the scarf that was around her head, and tied it to the top of my mast. All of a sudden, my ship was able to travel to faraway lands because I had a sail. My mother looked at me and said, "Pirates can't go anywhere they want to go without a good sail." It took me several years to realize the importance of what she did for me that day. It would have been so simple for her to dismiss my dreams as a kid at play, but she didn't. She not only acknowledged my dream, she helped stoke my imagination with her encouragement. That simple gesture of giving me a scarf had such huge ramifications in my life. To top it all off, I found out that the scarf was her favorite one, but she thought it was more important to encourage my imagination and flame the fire. Do you have a vision of how you want your business and life to be? Is that dream embedded in your brain in a way that is so compelling that it drives you where you need to be? We've been taught to believe that our dreams are not meant to come true and that dreaming takes us away from the task at hand. People accused of being daydreamers are thought to be lazy and foolish and not plugged into reality. And yet, how would things have ever gotten done if we didn't imagine the results beforehand? If Thomas Edison had not tried, failed, and retried over 6,000 times, we would not have the benefit of electric light bulbs today. Daydreaming is key to sharpening your focus on what you really, really want. Every invention and every great new idea was birthed at one time by people who daydreamed. I've been accused of being a daydreamer for much of my life, but I can honestly say that many of my aha bright ideas have been the result of my mind being allowed to wander off into the great unknown. The world goes around because of people who daydreamed, imagined, and strongly believed they could make the world a better place for themselves and for others. Let's take a short journey to the past. In the 1950s and 1960s, the lifespan of an S&P 500 company was about 40 years. In 1983, 25 years. And today, it's only about 15 years. The reason is very simple. It's because many companies are not continuously reinventing themselves and coming up with new and different innovative ideas. Many tend to rest on their laurels and don't change as fast as the rest of the world that is around them. Hey, the competition is more intense, technology is coming faster than ever, and change is happening at a pace that we've never seen before. Most businesses plan like this. They sit down with their leaders and say, okay, here's what our business looks like today. Where do we want to be in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years? The problem with that approach is that it limits the imagination of those involved. Instead of being a present to future thinker, we need to be a future back thinker. You can't let today's orthodoxy get in the way of envisioning your future. You have to first imagine that you are starting out with a completely white space, nothing at all on the chalkboard, and no restrictive systems in place. If you could develop the perfect enterprise not being constrained by your current systems, what would that look like? This is a great exercise for you, a good cup of coffee and a chair on your back deck. There was an article in Scientific American a while back that proposed to measure the efficiency of locomotion for lots of species on the planet to see which species were the most efficient at getting from point A to point B. And they measured the kilocalories that each one expended. They ranked them all, and guess what won? The condor. Humankind came in a rather unimpressive showing about a third of the way down the list. But someone there had the imagination to test the efficiency of a human on a bicycle, blew the condor and everything else away. Humans are tool builders, and we have learned how to fashion tools that amplify these inherent abilities that we have to spectacular magnitudes. Think about the explosion of these technologies: the personal computer, desktop publishing, the electrification of cars, your phone as your main computer, interactive video games. All these innovations came about because people were allowed to think in the white space on their respective chalkboards. Companies like Tesla, Airbnb, and Uber have completely disrupted entire industries when companies like Toys R Us, Sears, and Blockbuster Video have fallen by the wayside. In fact, 9 out of 10 businesses that start today will not be around in 10 years. And I venture to say it's because they will get stuck in doing business the same old way that they've always done business. They have the present-future approach instead of the future-back philosophy. Innovation has the power to reshape our future and transform entire industries. Allowing yourself the freedom to think out of the box when it comes to where you want your business to be down the road is vital to your ultimate success. If I gave you a chalkboard that had nothing on it but lots of nothingness, lots of white space, and I ask you to envision where your business will be in 10 years without any limitations of your current systems or operational constraints, what would you write down? What trend-setting ideas have been swirling around in your brain for all this time, but you thought they weren't feasible because of X, Y, or Z? What about innovations that nobody has latched onto yet that would revolutionize the way that your business model works? Don't let anything inhibit your thinking. Don't let structure get in the way of strategy. Once you have seen the future, let's say in 10 years, you will want to work backwards to figure out where you need to be at each juncture, where you need to be at year 8, at year 5, at year 2, and then of course today. What do you need to start doing today, right now, in order to be where you want to be down the road? I'm thinking that this exercise might be a 2 cups of coffee activity for your back deck. My review today is on a book entitled How Innovation Works and Why It Flourishes in Freedom by Matt Ridley. Innovation is the main event of the modern age, the reason we experience both dramatic improvements in our living standards and unsettling changes in our society. He argues we need to change the way we think about innovation, to see it as an incremental, bottom-up, fortuitous process that happens to society as a direct result of the human habit of exchange, rather than an orderly, top-down process developed according to a plan. Innovation is radically different from invention. It is always a collective, collaborative phenomenon, not a matter of a lonely genius sitting in a room somewhere. It is gradual, serendipitous, contagious, experimental, and unpredictable. He derives these and other lessons not with an abstract argument, but from telling the lively stories of scores of innovations, how they started, why they succeeded, and why some failed. He goes back millions of years and leaps forward into the very near future. Here's some of the innovative stories that he tells in the book. Stories about steam engines, jet engines, search engines, airships, coffee, potatoes, vaping, vaccines, cuisine, antibiotics, mosquito nets, turbines, propellers, fertilizer, zero, computers, dogs, farming, fire, genetic engineering, gene editing, container shipping, railways, cars, safety rules, wheeled suitcases, mobile phones, chlorinated water, toilets, vacuum cleaners, shale gas, the telegraph, radio, social media, blockchain, the sharing economy, artificial intelligence, fake bomb detectors, phantom game consoles, fraudulent blood tests, faddish diets, hyperloop tubes, copyright, and even a biological innovation, life itself. My bet is that there's something in that list that piqued your interest into wanting to check this book out. It will undoubtedly shake up your brain, so be prepared to have your creative juices a-rockin' and a-rollin' after you read this book. You'll find this book, as well as many other wonderful reads at powermarketing101.com/hotlist. That's powermarketing101.com/hotlist. Hello, Unleashed Tribe. I am so honored to have you as a loyal listener, and I'm very excited to tell you about the Business Edge Radio app, now available on Apple and Android devices. You can catch up on past episodes, watch short videos of the Business Edge Minute, our 60-second show that gives you quick and easy tips on building a better business and living a better life. And you'll get access to bonus materials that are only available on the app. In fact, I have a nice little PDF bonus waiting for you there right now. Plus, you can email the show, call the show, connect with us on social, check out our website, and even make a nice fluffy omelet. No, you can't really do that. Just go to the iTunes Store or Google Play Store, and you can download the Business Edge Radio app so you can be one of the cool kids on your block. Business Edge Radio, the ultimate brainstorming session for your business and life. Now available in the App Store. Download it today. And if you don't, I'll come visit you on your day off. In today's business world, it is vitally important that you understand what I call the 7 pillars of business success, which are lifestyle design, time management, branding, sales, marketing, pricing, and social media. Regardless of what industry you're in, and whether you have a brick and mortar or you're only online, having a solid foundation in these skill sets will set you up for success down the road. And to personally help you with your journey, I've come out with the Business Edge podcast, which you're listening to right this second, and I've also written a book that I can highly recommend called Business Basics Bootcamp, the ultimate crash course, now available on Amazon.com, and will give you the 30,000-foot view of all these topics and many, many more. You know, reading is something that is slowly being replaced by videos and audiobooks or just scrolling through your newsfeed on social media, but I've always found reading to be kind of an escape from whatever is happening in the world. This book will help you slow down just a little bit so you can get your business house in order, so to speak, and get your creative juices a-flowing. Log on to Amazon.com today and get your copy of Business Basics Bootcamp, the ultimate crash course. You can search my name, Mitch Graff, or search the title of the book. In the dog-eat-dog world of business success, the weak will perish and the strong will survive. Which will you be? Fans of Business Edge Radio, I have a very special treat for you. As you know, I love barbecuing and making up any excuse to get myself outdoors. And that's why I'm so excited to partner with BBQ Nation. They make incredible sauces and rubs and spices and meat shredders and grill scrapers and lots more. And they're offering a deal for our listeners. Check out bbqnation.net. And when you place an order for any of their products, you'll receive a 20% discount off your order when you enter the word EDGE at checkout. Looking for a magnet that lists your cooking temperatures or different types of smoking woods? They got that. Need a heavy-duty set of meat shredders for your pulled pork or shredded chicken sliders? They got that too. Or my favorite is their Magic Dust Everything Rub that will spice up just about any dish. Log on to bbqnation.net. That's bbqnation.net today. And when you enter the code EDGE at checkout, you'll receive a 20% discount just because you hang out with us on the show. BBQ Nation, get your grill on. I think we all would agree that the workplace is different today than it ever has been. Many people are now working from home instead of from a cubicle or from an office, and things are forever changed moving forward. Well, our guest today is going to be talking about how workplace culture is going through a seismic shift and how the younger generations are beginning to be the leaders of that shift. She's worked for over 25 years strategizing on global brand reputation management and corporate culture at major media companies, and is very uniquely qualified to guide organizations through this massive change that's happening in companies today. For the first time ever, There's 5 generations in the workplace. With workers from 18 to 85 years old, organizations are experiencing more miscommunications and misunderstandings than ever before. In her new book, Culture Shock: Surviving 5 Generations in One Workplace, she explains the challenges that we face right now with the changing landscape. I hope you enjoy my in-depth discussion with Dr. Joanna Massey. Well, Dr. Massey, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Mitch. It's great to be here, and feel free to call me Joanna. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, as an employer myself, I've worked hard over the years to kind of create a work culture within my companies that encourages cooperation and collaboration. I try to reward people that have innovative ideas and creative ideas. And I especially try to make each employee feel like they are the most important part of the business. I want them happy, and I want them productive and wanting to come to work and wanting to do the best job they can. And I want them to take ownership. But as I look across the business world today, it seems as though there's been this massive shift in workplace culture and how we are treating the employees. And right now, there's a lot of people working remotely, and a lot of them will never go back to working inside of an office or a cubicle. They're going to be remote for the rest of their tenure. So why has this massive shift, before COVID it was happening, why is this massive shift happening in your opinion?
I think that before COVID was happening, and it is two different things, because what happened was COVID accelerated this shift, because what you had was, I tend to look at things from a psychological and a business perspective. I spent 30 years in major media companies, publicly held companies, reporting into CEOs, presidents of divisions, and things like that. But I also have a PhD in psychology. And so when I look at business, I always combine the business and the psychology, because I find that they are inseparable. You cannot have one without the other, because businesses comprise people, right?
Mm-hmm, right.
Anyhow, what COVID-19 did was accelerate something that was happening, but it was happening slowly. And the reason it was happening slowly was because you had a portion of the workforce such as older generations. If you look at people who are known as the silent generation, who are in their early to 70s, 80s, some of whom are still very much at work, right? In politics and finance and Hollywood, in healthcare. So you have that generation plus the boomers, who are over 56 years old now, right? They're 56 in their 70s. And then you've got these two younger generations, millennials and Gen Z, who are pushing back and saying, hey, I don't need to be at work to do this. I have these devices now. I can do this anywhere, And by the way, mom and dad, i.e. baby boomers.
Yeah, I'm barely a baby boomer. I'm barely in that category. 2 years earlier, and I'd be in a different category, but I am one of those boomers.
Right. Right. So mom and dad, baby boomers, you raised me to have work-life balance. You raised me and taught me that I really ought to make sure to put family, friends, and my health before working, because baby boomers are workaholics. Gen X is also workaholic generation. But we taught these two generations differently, and they brought that into the workforce. And as bosses, we were like, hey, that's totally fine if you're my kid, but not when you're my employee. No.
I pay you to work.
Right. So what we were seeing in the workforce was a little bit of pushback. We had these two very large generations. Millennials are the largest generation in the workforce at this time in the United States. Generation Z is the largest generation in the United States. They're bigger than the boomers. Now, they're pretty young. They're between the ages of 10 and 23 this year. So they're not fully in the workforce. But once they are, that's going to be major.
Well, when you combine those two together, it's over 50%. Yeah, it's massive.
Oh, yeah. Massive. And their spending power alone right now is around 1.6 trillion, because that includes the influence they have as children on the parents. So this is a massive wave of what we're seeing in terms of spending power, in terms of thinking in the country, in terms of what they want. And on top of that, they have a megaphone that we have given them. It's called social media. And they use it. And not only that, they know how to use it better than the people who created it. In fact, in many cases, they've created it. So it was all the perfect storm for a shift that was happening, that was getting some pushback, that is now completely has to happen.
Well, and millennials and Gen Zs, like you were talking about, a huge demographic out there. They don't read newspapers like my generation does or did. They don't watch as much TV or go to the movies as much as the older generations do. They're completely fragmented across multiple platforms. YouTube, TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, they're everywhere. My 6-year-old can show me more about my Facebook page than I know. So it is going to be part of our future, no matter how much I try to resist it. How do you market to these people? And how do companies reach them when they're trying to sell their products and services?
I wrote a book called Culture Shock, and it's about all 5 generations that are in the workforce right now. And it spells out how each generation was raised, what was happening in the world when they were raised, and why they think the way they do, why they function the way they do. It's a really fascinating, if I do say so myself, it's a really fascinating look at what's happening in the world today. And the interesting thing about these 2 generations, millennials, but specifically Gen Z, the technology is in their DNA. It is who they are. So when you have in the office space or in marketing or as a company, everything you do now has to point toward them and where they're at. And the reason I mentioned the book is because there's a very funny story in it that happened to me where I was at an event it was a kind of snooty event in New York City, to be quite honest. And, there were people there in bow ties, let's put it that way, right? So these are, so anyway, I had a conversation. I was in a conversation. It was a 70-year-old plus man who was much older. He was retired. He'd grown up in the financial world, reading the Wall Street Journal and watching, when it came around, he was watching CNBC and Bloomberg. He was having a conversation with another young gentleman who was in a suit, in a bow tie, under the age of 30, who worked on Wall Street, and me in the middle, basically, as a Gen Xer. And the young guy said something about not getting his news from the Wall Street Journal or from CNBC, that he doesn't have it on at his office and that he doesn't read the journal. And the older gentleman mouth just fell open, his eyes popped open. I mean, imagine a cartoon character goes, like, what? Where do you get your information? Are you nuts? It was unfathomable to him. And I am silently laughing hysterically, almost crying. And because I know exactly what this young man is about to say.
Yeah.
What he said, look, I don't have to go to the news. The news comes to me. Everything I want is on an aggregator site. I can go to the Drudge Report in the morning. I can go to my Apple widget in the morning. There are any number of aggregator sites that push out to me that I get in my feed. And if I happen to miss something, it will show up on my social media that day. So yes, it's a huge, marketing to these kids is a huge problem for traditional marketers. You cannot think traditionally anymore. And I'll give you the perfect example of how wily they are. And whether you agree with it or not, there was a situation with Donald Trump and a rally that he did for his presidential campaign over the summer, where they thought they had sold millions of tickets, and it turned out they had barely sold a quarter.
I remember
of an arena.
that.
And
yeah.
So there was an empty arena. And what came out the next day was that there had been an underground effort on TikTok by teenagers who called and bought tickets but never had any intention of attending. And while the Trump campaign denied that had an effect, the truth is it probably had an effect. Now, they've since taken measures so that won't happen again. But the truth is that is a perfect example of how these kids understand this technology and how to use it so much better than the grown-ups, that they will outsmart us, at least on the first move. We might catch up to them on the second time, but they're going to get us the first time. And so it's really about being smart. It's about being innovative. It's about thinking outside of the box. These are things I've done my whole career when I'm in the corporate world. I've always described myself as an innovative, out of the box thinker. I never liked doing things the old fashioned way. And by the way, when I first entered the workforce in the late 80s, early 90s, the old fashioned way was way different than the old fashioned way today. But you have to constantly be looking at change. Part of that, and I'm a huge advocate for diverse teams. So diversity in this case means diversity of people of color. It means but it also means diversity of perspective when it comes to age, right? You need the older people on a team because they have really valuable institutional knowledge, but you need the younger people on the team because they know things that older people don't. They know how to work a system. They know how to communicate with each other better.
And it's a different system than it was back in the olden days. It's a completely different system.
Absolutely. And a different way of thinking. The way I have a second book called Communicating During a Crisis. And I talk about in the very beginning of COVID, the book just came out, in the very beginning of COVID-19, the way that the United States was communicating about the disease was through scientists and politicians, all in their 60s and 70s. They were primarily white men, and they were doing it through newspapers, and they were doing it through TV programs like Good Morning America. And very early on, somewhere around March 17th, 4th, 15th, 16th, 17th, somewhere in that, right as the shutdown started to happen, they realized they weren't reaching young people. And we were starting to see images of young people on spring break completely ignoring calls for social distancing. Mm-hmm. And Jerome Adams, who's the U.S. Surgeon General, went on Good Morning America. And that is the last place you need to go to communicate with kids. But what he did was interesting. What he said was, we need our influencers out there. We need people on social media. We need young people who are considered influencers communicating with other young people. He knew he wasn't the person to do it, and he knew he didn't have the access to do it. But because he went on GMA and did it, people like Kylie Jenner, who, by the way, he specifically name-checked her during the GMA appearance. So Kylie Jenner got the message. Many other people got the message. And what you started to see was a lot of musicians and actors, but more importantly, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok influencers putting out videos about staying at home, quarantining, social distancing, that type of thing.
You had mentioned rallies and politics, and in the olden days, and I'll say the olden days, it seems like just yesterday, but my whole career, I've always kept my personal opinions, my personal thoughts, my personal politics out of my businesses. And now it seems like there's people taking stands. I mean, we're talking big companies taking stands. And as soon as you do that, you lose 50% of the potential market. They won't continue to support your business and come in and give you money. They say that if Donald Trump is mentioned, or if someone supports Donald Trump, they say 60, 70% of the people will not go to that business. Conversely, if they support the other side of the spectrum, they're going to lose a percentage of business as well. How do you feel about that? And why is that the way it is today when it wasn't that way not too long ago?
I love that question because it is so different from what many of us are used to, and yet so prevalent. And I actually write about this also in Culture Shock because it is a big shift for businesses and frankly for families too. This is not just a corporate problem or a corporate change. It's a change across the board. And what I'll tell you is that with millennials and very specifically with Generation Z, as employees, right, as working for a company, and as people who buy your product or use your service, it is very important to them that they know what you stand for. It's not enough to just say who you are. You have to back it up with actions.
Even
right?
if potentially 50% of your business decides not to support your business?
So let me give you an interesting statistic. In every year, Piper Jaffray does a study of teen preferences, their favorite brands. The 2018 study, I haven't seen the 2019 one yet, but the 2018 study showed that the number one clothing brand among teenagers in that year was Nike. That is one of the most liberal companies that you can ever come across.
And they let you know that through their marketing. They let you know.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They're very clear on it. And because they get this, they understand that they have to take a stand, and they've picked their side and they're on it. However, the number one fast food chain with teenagers was ChickfilA, which is the most conservative, the absolute most conservative. If you look, I put this in Culture Shock. If you look at their mission statement, it says to serve God, right? And they have openly supported charities that are anti-LGBTQ. Now, what that says is that it is important that you come out and take a stand. However, this consumer, it's more important to them to know what you stand for so that they can make a decision. It doesn't mean they're going to reject you. It just means they want to know. What we need to understand as older generations is that anyone in this country who's 30 and under, and I include that includes younger millennials and all of Generation Z, they grew up with this device in their hands in which they can get all the information that they need in the entire world in a split second. So they expect it from everything.
The olden days, when I was young, I'd ask a question to my mom. She'd say, go look it up. We had a set of encyclopedias in the living room, and it was A to Z. It was a full-blown Britannica encyclopedia set. Son, go look it up. And that's where I got my information. It's from encyclopedias.
I actually, if you had not said that, I was going to say, how many times did you leave the dinner table to grab one of the encyclopedias to bring it back to the dinner table? It was the 60s and 70s version of Googling. Yeah.
Why do I have to eat my broccoli, Mom? Son, go look it up. No, she would just tell me I have to eat it because that's just what moms do. So it used to be that companies would pay millions of dollars to celebrities to endorse their products, right? It still happens today. But today, there's the paid influencer. You mentioned Kylie Jenner. Does influencer marketing really work? And who really buys this stuff just because Kylie Jenner says, go buy my fashion line?
It depends on the generation. I'm so glad you asked me that. I feel like either you if you haven't read my book, you should definitely go read it. But you and I are cut from the same cloth.
Yes,
like we think the same. And let me tell you that these younger generations, it really depends on the generation. And with Gen Z, the influencers that affect them are people who have they're what we call in the business micro influencer. And the definition of a micro influencer is somewhere between 10,000 and 50,000 followers on their social media. It is much smaller. And the reason why that person is more influential with the Generation Zer is because they're believed to be more authentic. When you get to the Kylie Jenner, any of the Kardashians or Jenners, anyone at that level, then the assumption is they know, everybody knows that those people are getting paid $1 million plus for one mention on their social media. Like, so if you have, they are what's called a macro influencer and or a mega influencer. There's a couple of different labels. And so, they're getting paid to a lot of money to mention something. Whereas at the smaller level, it's more word of mouth. It's more genuine. It's more organic. And that's why those influencers, the micro influencers, are bigger with Generation Z. They tend to lean toward word of mouth. And who is most influential with them are these micro influencers and their friends, their peers, which is why originally the messaging about COVID-19 wasn't working at all. Because you didn't have any of their peers telling them how important it was. You didn't have anybody their age explaining it from a scientific and factual perspective. It was coming from adults. It was coming through ways that they just, and also the messaging was wrong. The messaging was about how it wouldn't affect them, not how it would affect them.
Yeah, that's right. And one of the things I've noticed with the younger generations, and I try to market to all categories with my companies, and what I'm hearing you say, if I'm correct, is the older generation, the baby boomers and people that are older, they will go find the product. They will find the marketing. They will find the branding. But the younger generations, we need to take our message and our branding to them where they exist and where they consume their content. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yes, actually, that's a really good way to summarize it in a very umbrella way.
Because it's a different marketing approach. It requires a whole different mindset of how you promote and market your business and your products to the potential masses out there in the marketplace.
Absolutely. Although, as a PR and marketing person for my entire career, I will argue that it has always been that way, even as far back as Generation X and the boomers. Remember, the baby boomers are the hippies. This is the generation that set out to change the world. They certainly set out to change the government and business. And then you have Gen X that came up behind them. As someone who I worked in Hollywood for many years in movies, film, TV, everything, and then transitioned into digital content. And I can tell you that I've always been marketing to 18 to 34-year-olds. So whether those 18 to 34-year-olds were Gen X, Millennial, and now Gen Z, you've never been able to reach us in the most traditional way. So as a TV person, for example, it was always really easy for us to get a message to somebody who's 50 years old or older, even maybe 45 or older in the old days, because you have a family, you come home, you watch the nightly news, you read the newspaper. But if you wanted to reach an 18 to 34-year-old, you had to get them in different places. You had to get them maybe on a Entertainment Tonight or People Magazine or Oprah, or, there were other places you had to go. Now it's shifted completely, and you're looking at social media and YouTube, and not television and not newspaper, but blogs. Yes. Podcasts. Yes. So it's always been that 18 to 34-year-olds were more difficult to reach than an older population. But what has shifted significantly is where you go to get them.
Well, and you use examples of Chromebook. My 6-year-old in first grade has a Chromebook given to her by the school district, as does my 13-year-old and my 15-year-old. Guess what they're going to think of when it comes time for them to buy their first computer system, right? There's a connection there. And also Converse, they have their Chuck Taylor All-Stars, and those things are really popular with the kids. Well, Nike's had some promotions where they've actually went out to young influencers and had those kids wear their Chuck Taylor All-Star shoes on the red carpet and in front of the media, where they can be photographed and put out across all the platforms. Young kids see it, they want to buy it. In fact, I know that for a fact because both of my older kids ask me, Dad, can we have the $85 pair of Converse? And that's the cheapest pair they got. But it starts when they're young, and when they become older, I know people in their 40s and 50s that still wear the Converse Chuck Taylor All-Star shoes. It's amazing how that works.
It is, and that's always been the case. And I had a brilliant boss. I used to work for a woman named Margaret Lesh, who was CEO of a television network, and I was her head of PR. And she called it nostalgia instead of nostalgia. Nostalgia basically meant that anything, at the time, it was 1980s type programming was really popular. And this was in I'd say somewhere around 2012, 2013. 1980s program was popular because kids who had grown up in the 80s were suddenly at an age where they were kind of longing for the stuff that they knew, and they couldn't find it or didn't see it. But the same thing happens for every generation. We want the stuff that's familiar to us from childhood, the things that we liked and enjoyed. It's why toothpaste, it's why Coke and Pepsi, McDonald's and Burger King, they have a heck of a time moving consumers around, because our taste and our preference is solidified in childhood, like as teenagers.
So companies today, myself included, are having a hard time recruiting really talented young workers. They, like you said, they have a different set of reasons why they want to work. They have a different way that you have to approach them online. How do you go about attracting the best younger employees to work at your business versus somebody else's?
That's a great question. And one of the things I love to talk about in my books, and also I have a blog, and I constantly write about solutions, because I don't think it's enough to just talk about this stuff. It's all interesting about what's happening and all that, but you really need the solutions, because that's what we're interested in. Like, how do we move with the change? And one of I go into companies, I give corporate talks, and these days those are done on Zoom. But one of my favorite things to do as a consultant is to give these corporate talks to executive teams and to employees and organizations all over the world, actually. And I talk about how we need to adjust to recruit and retain young workers, because their needs are different. And I basically tell companies there are three main things you have to do. One is ask your employees what they need, because we assume as bosses, I've been in business for a long time, I know what these people need. No, you don't. You really don't. Trust me, you don't. So ask them. Here's the number two most important thing that you can run into this with CEOs. Listen to what they say. Don't take the survey or the feedback and say, yeah, we're not doing any of that. That's stupid. Or, yeah, we'll do 5 out of 10 of those things. I'm not giving them everything. You get a lot of pushback from the C-suite. So you want to listen to what they have to say. And then the third thing is you want to implement it transparently right? You want to be really transparent about what you're doing and why, and you need to make sure it is equitable. Whether that is about diversity of color of skin, whether that's about diversity of gender, whether that's about diversity of sexual orientation, like it needs to be equitable. That is so important to these younger generations. And what I would say is some solutions, some of the fun solutions I put in Culture Shock are things like, I think 4% or more of American companies right now are offering, instead of a 401k match, which is a very traditional thing, we're going to match some of your 401k funds, they now match student loan payments because millennials are buried in student loan debt. We've never had this problem in the United States before. They were just drowning in student loan debt, and now they're drowning in credit card debt because they can't catch up. And so a company, I can't remember which one company at one point figured out, like, why aren't any of our millennial workers contributing to a 401k? Like literally a huge majority weren't. So they asked their employees, and the answer was, I can't afford to contribute to a 401k. I'm still paying off my student loans. And so the company came up with this idea to match student loan debt. And guess what?
That's brilliant.
Huge. Right. And the other things are things like, the gold watch after 20 years or 25 years, whatever it is. No, nobody wants a gold watch anymore unless it's a Fitbit and it's attached to their iPhone.
Yeah, the gold watch was my generation. That's so old hat, right?
Right. And on top of that, I know my mother used to work for a big bank, and I won't name names. It's a great bank though. And she was a financial advisor, and she was there for, I think, 30 or 40 years. And every year at a major anniversary, she would get a catalog of stuff. Oh, how fun. I'll pick an iPad, or I'll pick a canoe, or like whatever they were offering. So yes, the gold watch went out the door, but truthfully, these kids don't hold on to jobs long. If they will jump quickly within a year or two, like really quickly, for more money or a better perk. There's two reasons that's happening. The first reason is because baby boomers and the silent generation are not retiring at the traditional age of 65. And as a result, these younger generations need to jump around in order to get ahead. They cannot stay at the same company, so they move around. But the second thing is they get bored really quickly because they're more highly educated than the silent generation, than the boomers. They're even more highly educated and experienced than Gen X. And so they get bored quickly, and they need to be challenged. And if they're not being challenged, they're going to move.
That definitely is a challenge that we all have in small business, medium business alike. We have to figure out how to make sure we are maintaining that entertainment, I guess, for our new employees. When we hire them, we want them to stick around for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and they want to get that gold watch. We want to give them that gold watch. But it's definitely a challenge for small businesses trying to figure out how to make that happen. All right, I could talk to you all day, Doctor, but last question, and we've got about 60 seconds. You have the nickname Queen of the Pivot. How did you get that nickname? Tell me the quick story about that.
The queen of pivoting. Yeah. So basically what happened is I had an idea about what my career would look like. It was that I was going to climb up a corporate ladder, and someday I would be chief communications officer and then CEO of a major media company. That's what I thought was going to happen. That is not at all what happened in my career. I have had to pivot so many times from being downsized out of media companies that were merged or acquired or joint ventured or shut down. Like I just kept getting caught in these situations that I nicknamed myself the Queen of Pivoting. I give a corporate talk on it. It's not a corporate talk. I give the talk to different organizations and groups who are trying to help their constituency figure out how to deal with the fact that careers are no longer corporate. You're not climbing a corporate ladder. You're basically climbing around a jungle gym. But I dubbed myself the Queen of Pivoting. It's on all my social media. And I do that because I really had to learn how to embrace change and pivot quickly and how to do that in a smart way.
I love it. And change is something that we all have to learn to live with, whether we want to accept it or not. The older generation, we tend to be more set in our ways, and we don't like to see a lot of change. But man, the change is coming, and it's coming fast, and either you have to accept it and move along with it, or we'll be left in the dust. We'll just be a carcass on the side of the business highway. Thank you so much for taking the time. A lot of great ideas that we need to be thinking about. Dr. Massey, how can people connect with you? How can they find out more about you?
Through my website is the best way, absolutely. And my company is JD Massey Associates, but that's way too long for a URL. So it's JDMA Inc. INC. So JDMAINC.com. And you can go there. I've got a blog, and you can also click the big connect button and you can email me.
And these great books you've talked about, is that on the website or go to Amazon?
The books are on Amazon. They're also on barnesandnoble.com, and you can also get them through the website, but the website links to Amazon.
That's beautiful. Dr. Massey, thank you so much for taking the time, and good luck in the future.
Thank you so much.
Times, they are a-changin', and we need to either keep up with those changes or we'll be left behind to eat the dust of those who do change. My biggest takeaway? The needs of employees today look a lot different than in days gone by. It requires us to be quick on our feet and come up with creative ways to offer extreme value to them as an employer. If we can do that, we'll be able to attract top employees into our fold and build the businesses of our dreams on their backs. Hello, Unleashed Tribe. I am so honored to have you as a loyal listener, and I'm very excited to tell you about the Business Edge Radio app, now available on Apple and Android devices. You can catch up on past episodes, watch short videos of the Business Edge Minute, our 60-second show that gives you quick and easy tips on building a better business and living a better life. And you'll get access to bonus materials that are only available on the app. In fact, I have a nice little PDF bonus waiting for you there right now. Plus, you can email the show, call the show, connect with us on social, check out our website, and even make a nice fluffy omelet. No, you can't really do that. Just go to the iTunes Store or Google Play Store, and you can download the Business Edge Radio app so you can be one of the cool kids on your block. Business Edge Radio, the ultimate brainstorming session for your business and life. Now available in the App Store. Download it today. And if you don't, I'll come visit you on your day off. For all the listeners of Business Edge Radio, I have a special gift for you. I want to give you a free copy of my book, High Voltage Branding, Go From Ordinary to Extraordinary, as my way of saying thank you for being a loyal listener. The book covers the most important elements of how to develop a great brand, build a loyal fan base for your products and services, and ways to identify if your brand is broke. Whether you're an old-timer or have a new business venture, having an impeccable brand is vital to your success. And this book will give you lots to think about. Simply go to powermarketing101.com/freebook. That's powermarketing101.com/freebook to download your free copy of the book High Voltage Branding, Go From Ordinary to Extraordinary, as my special way of saying thanks for being a fan of the show. If you know anything about me, you know that I love my early mornings, and I really love a good cup of fresh roasted coffee. There's nothing better than getting started before the rest of the world with a good cup of joe. That's why I'm so excited to have Mountain Creek Coffee as a partner. The process is so simple. You order, they roast, they ship, you enjoy. They don't roast your beans until an order is placed, which guarantees the absolute freshest coffee that you can get. Check out their artisan dark roast, medium roast, or decaf beans at mtncreekcoffee.com. And when you put in the code EDGE at checkout, you will receive 20% off your first order. I prefer the dark roast because of its full body and bold flavor. You order, they roast, they ship, you enjoy. Log on to mtncreekcoffee.com and enter the code EDGE at checkout, and you will receive a 20% discount off your first order. Pretty cool stuff. Mountain Creek Coffee and Business Edge Radio, a partnership brewed out of the love of coffee. See what I did right there?
Here's my email address.
Use the email. We get your mail. Let's dive into Mitch's mailbag and answer some of your burning questions.
There's a theme to today's letters. They're all from people asking questions about sales and how to drive more traffic when things are slow. So let's dive into the first email. This one is from Deborah in Georgia, who writes, "My family has been manufacturing and selling a line of fishing tackle for 12 years to the sporting goods industry. Over the past several months, I've had several of my bigger distributors pull way back on placing orders. So now I have a warehouse full of product and no customers to ship to. In 2019, our sales were $2.2 million, and I'm afraid we won't even do half of that this year. I will do everything in my power to not lay my employees off, as they are like family to me. We keep hoping that the orders will begin coming in, and I will be able to get back on track before making changes that need to be made." Deborah, thanks for the email, and thanks for sharing that pain point with me. From what I can tell, you've had a sales and marketing strategy of working through distributors, wholesale distributors, in order to generate all or most of your sales. Hard part about having done that is that now you're at the mercy of the retail shelves, which for many industries are slowly moving products right now. I prefer to have a little more control over my sales processes than that, and I understand, though, it's been the way that you've done things. Lots of companies institute that strategy. What they've also done over the last few years is developed a direct-to-consumer way of generating sales. Retail's changing, and it was changing way before 2020. Malls are closing down, big box stores are feeling the pressure from online retailers, and consumers have shifted their buying habits from brick-and-mortar shopping to shopping with their fingers, especially now. So the challenge I see is twofold, Deborah. You need to find replacement sales, and you need to reinvent some of your processes quickly, okay? If it were me, I would take a good, long, hard look at doing a pivot with your business and going direct to consumer. It sounds like you have a great team in place already, so all this would require is to repurpose some of their time and some of their skill sets, and instead of solely going after the wholesale market, which does have smaller margins, I suggest you create a division that attacks the consumer market directly. Now, you'll need to invest in a dynamic website. I'm sure you have one now, but I would recommend putting more resources into developing a website that's geared towards the consumer. You'd need to develop a stronger social media presence than probably what you've done in the past, and will need to work to expand your consumer database so that you can take back control over any future sales you have. Granted, selling one fishing lure to a guy named Joe in Missouri for $10 requires a different approach than selling 100 lures for $2.50 to ABC sporting goods stores. But if done correctly, you will find that it will free up a lot of that creative bandwidth for your staff, and eventually you'll replace your lost sales and will grow your margin contribution. Obviously, in the meantime, you have to tighten your belt and make the necessary changes to your systems in order to make it through. And at the same time, I suggest you put some resources towards building out a consumer sales system that can keep your products and your employees moving a little bit. Well, good luck with everything, Deborah, and I'm confident that between you and the rest of your family, you're going to be able to figure this out. And once you're able to sell directly to consumers, let me know. I'll be one of your first customers. Next email comes from Duluth, Minnesota. Darby writes, "Hi, Mitch. Thanks for doing this show. I've enjoyed listening on my way to work as a podcast." Well, thank you very much, Darby. I have a successful graphic design business that has 7 employees, and we keep pretty busy most of the time. The problem I have is that when you hire a great graphic artist, they typically don't come with very good sales skills. There has been several occasions when I felt we should have gotten some jobs, but they chose to go somewhere else. I don't have time to be there all the time, as I also own a construction company. And without me there, we don't close as many deals as I would like. Darby, a man after my own heart by not keeping all your eggs in one basket. First of all, I can understand why graphic designers aren't good at sales. They aren't trained that way. They were trained to be good at making gorgeous things inside of a computer. Completely different skill set. Now, that's not saying that they can't learn a few productive sales techniques that would help them close, but you may be better served if you went out and found someone who loves selling, who loves working with customers, and who loves the entire process. You may find that they will actually start going out and bringing you new business that you may not have been able to access before. They can hit the streets and do some guerrilla marketing for your business and help build your brand even more than it is right now. The old saying, if you don't like to sell, either learn how to do it and do it well, or find someone who can, holds true for just about any situation. If you opt to just beef up the skill sets of your current staff, that's also going to bring you some results, but I'm thinking that having a sales superstar is what may be best for you right now. Darby, thanks for the great question, and I wish you luck with your future sales success. If you have a question that you would like answered on air, send me an email to info@powermarketing101.com, and maybe I'll read your question on the air.
Time for Cooking Corner with Mitch. Yum.
Today, we're going to be slowing things down a little bit this coming Sunday morning, and we're going to be making a Northwest Breakfast Casserole. To get started on this recipe, grab yourself a fresh cup of roasted coffee, turn on some nice music, and join me in the kitchen. In my house, the definition of things that go into casseroles are anything that's been in the fridge for more than 2 days, which officially classifies itself as a leftover. Baked dishes have existed for thousands of years. Early casserole recipes consisted of rice that was pounded, pressed, and filled with a savory mixture of meats such as chicken or sweetmeats. Sometime around the 1870s, this sense of casserole seems to have taken on its current sense. Cooking in earthenware containers has always been common in most cultures, but the idea of casserole cooking as a main dish became popular in the United States in the 20th century, especially in the 1950s when new forms of lightweight metal and glass cookware appeared on the market. By the 1970s, casseroles took on a less than sophisticated image, which has always confounded me. I think casseroles are a great way to get all of your food groups in a single course, and it makes for washing dishes much easier. In the US, a casserole is typically a baked food with 3 main components: pieces of meat, such as chicken or ground beef, or fish like tuna, various chopped vegetables, and a starchy binder like flour, potatoes, or pasta. Sometimes there's also a crunchy or cheesy topping, always in my house. Liquids are released from the meat and vegetables during cooking, and further liquid in the form of stock, or wine, beer, gin, cider, vegetable juice, or even water can be added when the dish is assembled. Casseroles are usually cooked slowly in the oven, often uncovered. They may be served as a main course or a side dish, and conveniently may be served in the vessel in which they were cooked in. Alright, so here's what you need for this recipe, and remember one of my golden rules of cooking: if you like one of the ingredients, add a little bit more. If you don't, add less, or take it out altogether. I call it the ish method. Add a cup of cheese, ish. You will need 2.5 cups of milk, you can choose what kind, 1/4 cup of yellow chopped onion, 1/2 cup of sliced mushrooms, 1/4 cup of diced tomatoes, 1 cup of diced potatoes, 1/2 cup of cooked ground sausage, 1/2 cup of diced bacon, 1/2 cup of Velveeta cheese, 1/2 cup of sharp cheddar cheese, and 3 slices of buttered toast cubed. You can use wheat or sourdough or gluten-free or any other type of bread that you prefer. First of all, brown your sausage, mushrooms, and onion in a pan. Meanwhile, on the side in a separate bowl, beat your eggs with your milk. Prepare a 9x13 baking dish with nonstick cooking spray or some butter. Place the cube bread on the bottom and spread the cheese over the bread. Cover with the egg mixture and sprinkle all the other ingredients on top of that. Preheat your oven to 350 and bake for 45 to 60 minutes or until the casserole is completely set. If you want, pull the casserole out about the 10 minutes to go mark and sprinkle some more of your favorite cheese on top. Ish. Some variations you can try are adding hamburger or diced ham, adding some bell peppers. This little jewel is great on those Sunday mornings when nobody wants to cook, but everybody is hungry. It's also great for those family brunches that happen a lot over the cooler months. Give it a try and let me know how this one turns out. Well, that will do it for this edition of Business Edge Radio. My parting shot today is this: limitations live only in our minds. But if we use our imaginations, our possibilities become limitless. Jamie Palinetti. Until next time, this is Mitch Graff, reminding you to live every day like it's a Saturday and to live with passion. I'll catch you later.
Thanks for hanging out with Business Edge Radio. If you enjoyed today's show, we invite you to subscribe, rate, and review. Then hop on over to www.mitchgraff.com to get even more meat and potatoes. We also invite you to follow the show at facebook.com/Unleashed Tribe. The most valuable asset that any of us has is our time. And we thank you for choosing to spend some of your precious time with us.